We have started our discussion of the 12 links of dependent arising, which is describing the mechanism whereby we continue to have uncontrollably recurring aggregates, uncontrollably recurring rebirth, with the tainted aggregates that are going to be the basis for experiencing the up and down sufferings of unhappiness and our ordinary unsatisfying happiness. And they are tainted in the sense that they come from unawareness. It's our first link. And we saw that the way in which we build up the karmic causes for uncontrollably recurring rebirth is through the first 3 links. That is unawareness about how we and others exist, which is the basis for experiencing disturbing emotions and disturbing attitudes. That then is what is underlying our compulsiveness, which is the affecting impulses. That's the second link, which then leads to acting in either destructive ways. These, by the way, are self-destructive when we talk about destructive actions, because we can never really guarantee what the effect of our behavior is going to be on somebody else. But for sure, if we act on the basis of disturbing emotions and disturbing attitudes, it's going to be self-destructive, that we ourselves are going to experience unhappiness and difficulties as a result. And when we act out this, the compulsion that drives us to act in these either destructive ways or neurotically constructive ways, then that leaves karmic aftermath, tendencies, habits, potentials, etc., to experience various results from this. And these are carried along, imputed on the third aggregate, the mental consciousness, or just consciousness, let's say, the stream of continuity. There are different tenet systems within Buddhism are going to describe differently what level of consciousness, what type of consciousness is going to carry on or be the basis for labeling these tendencies and so on. And that's why this link is just specified with a more general word of consciousness. There are 2 phases to that. There's the loaded consciousness in that particular lifetime in which we act in a certain way based on compulsion. And then in a next lifetime, this begins the whole process of the development of the aggregates that are going to ripen from these karmic tendencies. And these aggregates are again going to be the foundation in which, or with which, we experience unhappiness or ordinary happiness that ripens from the karmic tendencies. So, second aspect of the third link, which is the ripened consciousness, is going to be in the next lifetime. So then we have the next set of links, which we discussed this morning, which describe the development of the aggregates in a particular lifetime, so that we have this foundation. So we have the nameable mental faculties with or without form. So first we get just the undifferentiated consciousness and undifferentiated form aggregate. The consciousness first makes contact with a sperm and an egg, fertilized sperm and egg, or whatever level of development that embryo has to be at. And then with the next link, we're going to get a differentiation within that of the different types of consciousness, and the name of that link, stimulators of cognition, will refer to the cognitive objects, so the different sense fields, and the mental field as well. and the sensorial cells that will be able to be the what's called the dominating condition for perceiving sights or sounds or so on. So photosensitive cells, sound-sensitive cells, and so on. Then we get contacting awareness, that the aggregate of distinguishing is now developed so that it's possible to distinguish various objects within these sense fields. And contacting awareness is a mental factor that's in the aggregate of other affecting variables that is the experiencing of these distinguished objects as pleasant, contact with it as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And then we get the feeling link number 7, which is based on pleasant contacting awareness with an object. We have the feeling of happiness. Based on unpleasant, we have feeling of unhappiness, and based on neutral, we have an experience of a neutral type of feeling. So that's the feeling aggregate. So now various other mental factors and so on are going to be developed as well from their own tendencies of destructive emotions, constructive, positive emotions, and so on, and the various other mental factors, intelligence, concentration, interest, etc. And we now have the full working basis for experiencing, what should we say, further rebirth, continuing rebirth. So what we need to focus on now are the feelings of happiness and unhappiness, or neutral, that we are experiencing. And we're going to experience some level of that in every moment of our life. Obviously, when we are in deep sleep, it's a neutral feeling, neither happy nor unhappy. During dreams, it could be any of the three, and obviously when we're awake, it could be any of the three. And that level of feeling, whether it's happy, unhappy, or neutral, is going to be a ripened result of our previous karmic tendencies. You know, there's this general way of speaking, which we say that this is the ripening of our karma, but it's not actually the karma that ripens. It's not the compulsion that ripens. It's the aftermath of that compulsion and the compulsive behavior that is going to ripen. So that's just a general loose way of speaking when they say it's the ripening of karma. Okay? Now, what is really very important now are the next 3 links. The next 3 links are speaking about what activates the karmic tendencies at the time of death that is going to then propel the mental continuum into further rebirth. And here we have a set of 3 links, and very important to try to understand them, to try to recognize them, particularly the next 2. Link number 8 is usually translated as craving. I mean, the usual translations of these are craving, grasping, and becoming, but these are not very precise translations or clear translations that give us an idea of what they're actually referring to. So let's look at each of these individually. Craving, that is actually the Sanskrit word for thirst, to be thirsty. So thirsting The Tibetans don't translate it as thirst either, but you have to go back. Sometimes even the Tibetan doesn't carry the full connotation of the Sanskrit word. So you go back to the Sanskrit, and we have thirsting. This is in response to a feeling. So the thirst image is very helpful here. It is a subcategory of longing desire. It's a type of longing desire. And what is longing desire? And actually it's a type of attachment because we're already experiencing something. Remember, longing desire was for something you don't have. Attachment is so you want it, something that you have attachment for, so you don't want to let go. And then greed, you always want more. So actually, I have to correct myself. It's a type of longing desire. It's for something that we don't have. Now, for happiness, what we want is not to be parted from that happiness. Longing desire is accompanied by a projection, an interpolation. And the projection is to project onto something that we don't have, that it has extra qualities, good qualities that it doesn't have, or it exaggerates the good qualities that are there, or has incorrect consideration of it. Okay, so now imagine the image of when you are really, really thirsty and you get something to drink and you just have a tiny little sip of it. So now you are thirsting. Your thirst is not to be parted from that. You don't want just a tiny little drink and then somebody takes it away. You want more. Right? But here we're not talking about attachment to the happiness that we have. We're talking about happy. I'm feeling happy. So it's specifically at the time of death, but we can also understand this in terms of our ordinary lives, our ordinary experiences of happiness, which might not be very dramatic. In most cases, it's not dramatic when we feel happy. It's not whoopee, you know, I'm so happy. But rather, our focus is on not to be parted from it. That's what we are thirsting for. So it's very subtle, what we're speaking about here. And what does it exaggerate? It's accompanied by an exaggeration. And the exaggeration is that the good qualities of our ordinary type of not being parted is going to last forever. Very subtle, actually, because what we think of is we're thinking of our ordinary happiness. And implicit here is that that ordinary happiness can last forever, which obviously it won't. So it's incorrect consideration that that will be forever, whereas in fact it's impermanent. It's not going to last. So we want, but we're not really focusing on that. We're focusing on this, what's called a negation phenomenon, negative phenomenon, of not to be parted from it. So actually a double negative here. That is something that I could have forever. Now, if you think about it, this is not the renunciation with which you want to be parted forever from suffering, or not parted ever from, untainted happiness. That would be if you apply opponent forces to get rid of unhappiness. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about just ordinary type of parting that we don't want to have. Perhaps I'm not explaining this clearly enough, because it's actually quite subtle. Let me think how I can explain this. We could be parted from something two different ways. One is just our ordinary way of, well, I'm happy, I don't want it to end. We're not really thinking of what I can do to make that happen. We're just thinking, well, this is great, I'm with my friend, and I'm so happy, and it's so wonderful, and I hope they don't leave. So that's what we are longing for, that they don't leave, in a sense. That this sexual experiencing that I'm experiencing now doesn't end. I don't want to be parted from it. This food that I'm enjoying, we're not talking about the food, we're talking about the happiness. The happiness, the enjoyment that I'm having from eating this food, I don't want it to end.
Could a good example be something like youth?
Like youth. The happiness of youth, I don't want it to end. I don't want to be parted from it.
Good looks or whatever.
Your own good looks. How vain are we?
Somebody else.
Somebody else's, okay. Right. We don't want to be parted from that. We don't want it to end. So it is imagining that that could come about. So we're not talking about a deep, profound level of achieving a true stopping of anything, or attaining, an untainted state in which, that happiness is going to be stable. It's not based on, attachment or anything like that. And we're just thinking in a very, very ordinary level, with a misconception that somehow it's going to be forever. That this, sexual pleasure, or not pleasure, but the happiness, and the happiness of being with somebody, and the happiness of feeling healthy and young, and these sort of things are not going to end. Okay? And it's a thirst. You have a little bit of it, and you don't want it to be taken away. Okay?
But it's not the thirsting after the happiness?
It's not thirsting after the happiness. It's thirsting after not being parted from it.
Okay.
It's subtle. It's, in all three cases, it's thirsting for something which is a negation phenomenon, not the positive phenomenon of the happiness, but the not ending of the happiness. Psychologically, it's a very interesting thing. Yes.
In terms of the death process?
In the terms of the death process, you're not dead yet.
Okay, sorry.
You're not dead. You're lying there, and let's say you are sick, and you don't want, whatever happiness that you are experiencing in that life to end with death, for example. So you're longing for death not to happen. Okay? We take it in the grossest level of when you're dying. Remember, this is talking about activating, specifically it's talking about activating the, that karma, the throwing karma, it's called, that compulsion that will, lost basis, and you grab onto the next basis, anything to save you from drowning, in a sense, if you want to use that type of image. Now, so another set of, sperm and egg, if going to be type of creature that is born from sperm and egg. The next one is thirsting because of fear, it's called, which is to be parted from unhappiness. So you're thirsting for the parting of that unhappiness. So it exaggerates the good quality of the state of being parted from unhappiness by ordinary means. Thinks that just by ordinary means I can get a happiness that'll last forever, which won't. Or by ordinary means, if I don't get parted from my happiness, that'll last forever. You follow that? If by, more medicine I could stay alive forever, then I won't die. Or by ordinary means, if I can be parted from my unhappiness, again, get some sort of morphine or something like that. Well, I'm dying of cancer, that I'll never feel pain again. Well, I'll never be unhappy again. Well, obviously that is a myth. That's a misconception, an exaggeration. So it's this type of thirst that we're talking about. And then the third one is, literally, the name of it is thirsting in relation to higher states of compulsive existence. I'm flushing out. It's just thirsting for existence is literally the word, but that doesn't mean that you're thirsting for a future life. It is thirsting if you are in a deep state of meditative absorption, as in the higher levels of the form realm. That would be the plane of ethereal forms, or the plane of formless beings, so-called formless realm. If you are in that type of experience, or in that type of rebirth, that what you're thirsting for is that neutral feeling that you are feeling. It's neither happy nor unhappy, which you have to be, to be exactly, no happiness or unhappiness. Right in the middle is pretty difficult. So when you're in this deep absorption, you have gotten much more subtle and withdrawn from that, those levels of happy and unhappy. You're really sunk into that. You want that not to degenerate. So perhaps in our ordinary experience, it would be if we are on a heavy drug, a painkiller, when you're dying of cancer, and you basically don't feel anything. We're not talking about a drug that makes you feel high, but a drug that makes you feel nothing. And what you're thirsting for is not to be, for that state not to degenerate. And again, it is based on a misconception, a projection, that somehow it could last forever without degenerating. And is that a type, is there some suffering? I mean, it's very uncomfortable when you are thirsting for not to be parted from, don't leave me. I don't want you to leave because I'm so happy to be with you. So you're thirsting for them not to go, for that happiness not to end. It's a very uncomfortable state, not at all calm. And if you are uncomfortable and unhappy and you want it to go away, you're certainly not calm. And if you are in this deep absorption or drugged or something like that, and you don't want it to degenerate, how do you experience that? You're nervous that perhaps it'll go away, aren't you? I don't want it to diminish. So again, it is an uncomfortable state. But it's very important to recognize that this disturbing emotion with regard to our feelings of happy, unhappy, and neutral. We're not talking about renunciation. It's very different from renunciation. Determination to be free. Yes, we are determined to be free from this. All of these are suffering, basically. Determination to be free is with the Four Noble Truths, that we understand clearly what is the nature of this, where is it coming from. We understand that it is possible to stop it forever, and we understand what is the method for being able to do that, the true method for being able to do that. And we're convinced that it's possible. So there's a tremendous amount of understanding which is backing up renunciation. This is just on our ordinary level, this thirsting that we have. And that is why I was saying that what you have to, a way of practicing which is applicable in our ordinary life is this nothing special thing. Don't thirst. Don't be like the thirsty person, oh, love me, and you're like a thirsty person. When we are experiencing these various levels of happy, unhappy, or neutral. Okay? Well, think about it. This is a fairly subtle type of disturbing emotion that we're talking about, but one that is going to be involved in the whole process of activating the tendencies and potentials. You see, this link and the next link together are what activate these tendencies at the time of death to then become activated. Now they are karma again. It's a compulsion at the time of death to go on and take another set of aggregates just to try to make yourself secure.
When you talk about death, it's not only the death of the body, it's like the death of every moment.
Are we talking about only the death of the body of this lifetime, or also the death of every moment? There is a presentation of the 12 links that explains how the 12 links are complete in each moment of our experience. So it can also be used to explain how this moment of tainted aggregates produces the next moment of it. But the more usual explanation of it is in terms of death and how rebirth works from one lifetime to another. So in the presentation that you have of this operating in each moment, don't use that as an excuse for not even thinking of, future lives and stuff like that. So you're in total, what should we say, denial of that. We're saying that it doesn't exist at all, and you have reduced Dharma to, the real thing Dharma, which is what we're talking about, to what I call Dharma light, which is just to improve this lifetime, which is a legitimate thing to be concerned about, but that's not the actual Dharma teachings. The actual Dharma teachings start in terms of thinking of future lives. But this point about thirst and the next one, these obtainer attitudes and emotions, are very relevant in each moment. That we have to watch out, because this is what triggers various karmic things to ripen in each moment as well. Yeah.
How do these 12 links relate to the bardo?
How do these 12 links relate to the bardo? The bardo will be when we speak of the activated compulsion, for further existence, that will then lead to death, and then bardo, and then rebirth, and then the whole period before the next death. So that will come, but it's not specifically discussed in the 12 links. Okay? So thirst. Just make sure that you've understood it. Thirsting. I like using the Sanskrit word because it really has the flavor of it being very uncomfortable, doesn't it? No matter what we're feeling, we feel uncomfortable. It ties into that whole discussion of how unawareness about how we exist, we experience that as feeling insecure. Okay, now the next one, the next link, is usually translated as grasping, but it's not at all the same word as grasping for true existence, or any of the other usages of the word grasping. Therefore, it's not helpful to translate it with the same word. It's not the same word in any of the original languages. So it is literally an obtainer. It's something that will obtain for us the next set of aggregates. Remember, we had these two adjectives that can be applied to the aggregates. Tainted means that it comes from unawareness, and obtainer aggregates are aggregates, it's the same word here, that will have the mechanism to perpetuate themselves so that you will obtain more. So now we have these obtainer disturbing emotions or disturbing attitudes. And there's a list of them that come following upon this thirst. So the first of these is obtainer desire. And this is a disturbing emotion, and it's for some desirable sensory object. So it could be, like when you're unhappy, you want delicious food. Some people, I'm so unhappy, I'll have some chocolate, that'll make me happy. So I will be parted from that unhappiness. Or a hug, the physical sensation of a hug. That somehow this is going to make me happy. But of course, we're thinking of a very ordinary type of happiness. If you're hugged for too long, that becomes a problem, doesn't it? Let go! Or when we are happy, we don't want to be parted from that. Easy example is that warm, comfortable feeling lying in bed when the alarm clock goes off, and we do not want to be parted from, so first we don't want to be parted from the happiness that I'm feeling, so nice and warm and comfortable in bed, and now the actual object itself, that physical sensation. So not just the happiness, but the physical sensation, or the object itself that is giving that sensation or sight or something like that. Or if we have a certain type of sensation or object, we don't want it to decline. So this is in connection with what we were experiencing before, that thirst. So there are many types of things. If you think in terms of death, somebody is dying, just hold my hand, somehow that's going to keep me from dying. That type of thing. Or you have your friends around or your loved ones around. So that attachment, that desire, is also going to be involved in activating that throwing karma, because when you realize that you can't hold on to them, then you grab for another rebirth. So this obtainer also has this connotation of to grab out for something in the next life, when you can't keep what you have now. Okay? Then we get a list of disturbing attitudes. And disturbing attitudes, remember, are latching on to something so that then we project onto it certain attitudes. Disturbing attitude itself, I mean, very, very difficult to find words to translate these things. But they work in conjunction with the projecting mechanism. The disturbing attitude doesn't actually project the attitude. It sort of latches on. Then wrong or incorrect consideration and so on will make this projection. Anyway, without going into too much detail, we have an obtainer deluded outlook. This is 3. It's the way they classify things in these systems. A distorted outlook. Distorted outlook would be to deny that in a next life we will experience any effects of our behavior, of what we have been experiencing in this lifetime. So you're accepting that there is rebirth, but you think that when we die, it's like our hard drive will be wiped clean, and you start with a fresh hard drive, a fresh slate. In your next lifetime, there will be no consequences that carry over into future lives from what we have done in this lifetime. It's an attitude. You know, you're latching on to a future life, and then you're projecting onto it that there'll be like a wiped clean hard drive. So that's one variant. And the other variant is a denial of rebirth altogether. So you think that this life is the only one for an independently existing me. So again, there'll be no consequences of what we've done in this lifetime. No effect of what we've done. So this is one point. And as I said, one could apply this to daily life as well, thinking that there's no effect of what I do. You know, people who smoke and are in complete denial that it's going to affect their health. And even if they know that, there's the warning on the cigarette box that this can lead to death and it's deadly and damage your health and so on, they don't really believe that. It doesn't really sink in. So no effect of what I do. This type of attitude. And that really is going to, one can think in a very simplistic way that that definitely is going to lead to getting cancer, because you're denying that there's any effect of what you're doing. So what you're building up from all that smoking obviously is going to ripen into something. You're activating it by continuing to smoke with that denial that it has any effect. You follow? One needs to try to find practical everyday experiences that one can use as examples for these various disturbing attitudes. Yeah.
Just to clarify, the disturbing attitude of grasping towards the next life or body, I mean, that's kind
the
of...
disturbing outlook here is specifically at the time of death, that either there is no future life, so there's no results of my actions, or in a future life it will continue, but I start clean, with no consequences.
So in a way, you see no problem in grabbing and holding that.
So there's no problem in,
Grabbing the next life or something like this.
right.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, this is, well, everything really depends on how convinced you are of this, whether you have any doubts in terms of how really confirmed you are in this type of attitude. But it is a disturbing one. It's, you know, it's not really in accord with reality. So you don't really do anything to ensure that we don't have more problems in the future. So basically it's perpetuating samsara. Also, you should keep in mind that many of these things are going to network together. It's not just, you know, linear, one thing that is operating. Okay, so we have a diluted outlook. Then we have an extreme outlook. That's the next one, which is our present body and minds with the true identity of me. So I'm not going to die. It's very interesting. No matter how old you are, most people will still consider themselves young. You know, you're in your 80s, and yeah, well, we're still young. It's the people in their 90s. They're the old ones. We're still young. You go to a retirement village, it's amazing how the people still consider themselves young. And only the ones in the nursing homes, they're the old ones. So anyway, the body and mind that has the true identity, that's me, and it's going to last forever. So it's a denial of gross impermanence of death. And then the other variant of it, which is very, very interesting, is that there's no continuity after death. And so when we are dead, it's like we go into a big nothing. And it's very interesting because if you think that you're going to somehow go into a big nothing when you die, why are people afraid of that? Yet people are afraid of that, aren't they?
Not always.
Not always. Obviously, not always. There are always exceptions. But for many people, that's a frightening thing. Now I am nothing. And if you think about it, actually, it is a belief that you're going to go on forever as a nothing. I am dead now. Well, there's still me. You're going to stop being dead at some point, is it? So I'm dead forever, and I have become this big nothing. So this is a weird attitude, actually, also, which is an extreme outlook, it's called. Either go into nothingness. Then we have holding a deluded outlook as supreme, pure, clean, and a source of true happiness. And then with this deluded outlook, we hold such an attitude as supreme. We think it's totally true and will lead to liberation if we fully realize it. The body is so wonderful. It's the body beautiful. It's clean. It's wonderful. It's my source of happiness. And if I just realize that, and you know, that everything is, you know, so perfect with this body, that then I will be liberated. That's the best attitude to have. You know, it could lead to, well, if I really have a good physique, or if I have a facelift and, you know, look good, that this is going to bring lasting happiness. This is the supreme view. The other variant of this is just the opposite, that all of this is dirty and impure and a source of suffering, which, although that is correct in terms of seeing what's inside the body and what the body does when you put nice food in your mouth and chew it a little bit and then spit it out, or what comes out your other end that you've done with the food, what you've manufactured out of the food, then you realize that it's not so clean and wonderful. But here, it's with an exaggeration of the negative qualities. It's repulsive, it's bad, this type of thing. And so then you mortify yourself, you know. I mean, it's leading to that. Mortify means that you beat yourself, and this.
So getting old and sick could be this last.
Well, as you grow old, worshiping youth, and you know, this type of thing. That the body could be so beautiful and so on. This will be wonderful. If I could look good in the coffin when I die and have my hair done, you know, really nicely so that I die looking good. I mean, come on. This type of thing is very deluded, isn't it? Now, this is the best thing that you could do. All right. Then when we say about a deluded outlook as supreme, it's thinking that these attitudes will lead to liberation. If you could worship the body and know that it's, you know, my temple and stuff like that, that will lead you to liberation. Or if you realize that the body is a hell type of thing, you know, a real negative attitude, that will be liberation. So that's this disturbing outlook. And what it does, we're talking about activating karma for future lives, for continuing. Then the next one is a disturbing attitude of holding deluded morality or conduct as supreme. Disturbing attitude of holding deluded morality or deluded conduct as supreme. Deluded morality is ridding ourselves of some trivial manner of behavior that's meaningless to give up, particularly under the circumstance of dying. An example would be giving up unhealthy food when we're in the final stages of terminal cancer. You know, you're dying, so what difference does it make whether you eat ice cream and cake or whatever? Oh, it's bad for me. Come on, you're dying. So this is deluded morality, thinking that somehow this is okay. And the other is deluded conduct, is to dress, act, or speak in some trivial manner that, again, is meaningless to adopt in the face of imminent death. For instance, clutching a good luck charm when you're dying, that this is going to save you somehow, or bathing in the Ganges River before you die, that this is going to then, you know, purify you of all your sins and you will go to heaven, or something like that. So we are convinced that acting in these trivial ways will purify us of anything negative, liberate us from all our worries, and definitely deliver us to a better fate. So deluded morality is giving up something, and the deluded conduct is doing something, both of which are trivial, and thinking that this is somehow going to liberate us. You know, if I just stop eating junk food when I'm dying, that somehow I won't die. Yeah.
Maybe I understand this wrong, but some of this, doesn't it sound dualistic in what the mind and the body and what I do to my body? Isn't it
right. Isn't this dualistic? Exactly. And that is the last of the disturbing outlooks here. The deluded outlooks, I should say. That is the most important one, which is this dualistic type of view. Sure, it's dualistic, that there is I mean, what's underlying all of this is unawareness. You know, thinking that there is some independently existing me, that somehow if I deny death or something like that, it's going to last forever. Or if I have, you know, these deluded ideas about what will save me, that somehow that solid me will last forever in some paradise or something like that. And of course, it just activates having more samsara, more rebirth, rather than getting what you think that, what you hope to get. So, last one, the most important one, I think, in terms of what we have to work on and try to recognize in each moment. The real troublemaker has, it's called here in the list, asserting our identities. And this refers to the disturbing attitude of, and here's technical jargon, a deluded outlook toward a transitory network. Deluded outlook toward a transitory network. Network is the network of our aggregates. Transitory means that it is not lasting. It's changing from moment to moment. And the deluded outlook toward it is that you identify with it. So it is throwing out this net of me and mine, either according to the non-prasangika views on the aggregates itself, that is me, my body, the body, that's me, or the mind, that's me, or that it's mine to control that, something that it's my habitat of this solid me that lives inside it and possesses it and controls it and uses it for enjoyment. I'm going to use my youth, use my body to have as much fun as I can. This type of thing. I'll use my brain as if there's a little me sitting behind the board, you know, at a chair. I'm going to use my brain to figure this out and get ahead and get a good job. So throwing out this net of me and mine. So the non-prasangikas say that you throw it out onto the aggregates. Prasangika says you actually throw it out onto the conventional me in relation to the aggregates, me or me the possessor of them, or onto them as they are me or they are my possession, they're mine. So two variants of it, and we don't need to go into which one, you know, is more helpful. Both helpful. Okay? So that is this link, the obtainer. So we have thirst, which is directed toward the feelings that we have, happy and unhappy. And then we have an obtainer attitude, or obtainer emotion. That's going to activate what's called throwing karma. So that is the ninth link. That's called further existence, is the name of it. It's usually translated as becoming, which is a meaningless way of translating it. It's further existence, and that's giving the name of the result to the cause.
I think it's the 10th link.
Pardon?
It's the 10th link.
That's the 10th link.
Yeah.
You know, you have this in Indian systems. We give the name of the result to the cause. Bodhicitta meditation, well, actually, it's the meditations that will lead up to achieving bodhicitta. So you're giving the name of the result to the cause. So here, they're giving the name of the result to the cause, and the cause of further existence is the activated karma, the compulsion That's the compulsion to continue to exist, further existence. It's a very real thing. That's our survival instinct. That's why, you put your head underwater, and why do you want to take your head out of the water? It's a very strong compulsive drive to continue existing. And that is what gets activated at the time of death by this thirsting and obtainer attitude, and what is going to then, if you think graphically, cause us to grab on to more aggregates so that we'll continue to exist. So it is to continue exist that throws us into death existence, Bardo existence, next rebirth existence, and then the whole period before the following death. So there are these 4 phases that are going to follow from that. And then that's summarized by the last 2 links, conception and aging and dying. Conception is the 11th link, the 11th link, and aging and dying. Aging starts the second moment after conception. Aging and then dying. So those are the 12 links. So what we need to really try to understand very well are the what aspects of these 12 links are what. And first of all, we've seen that it's not linear. It's describing the whole rebirth process from several angles. One is the angle of planting, building up more karmic potentials. Next set is how they actually, the mechanism for their ripening is going to develop, how they actually are going to be activated, and then what results from them once they are activated with another life. So it's not quite linear, but that's not really our focus here on these aspects of the 12 links. What is much more important for our topic is how do you stop it? And so what we want to focus on are the links which are disturbing emotions and the links which are karmas, which are compulsions. So unawareness and this thirsting and these obtainers, these are disturbing emotions, disturbing attitudes, and the compulsion of our compulsive karmic behavior and the activated compulsion to continue existing. These are the karmas that we have to work on to get rid of them. So let us try to understand what we are talking about when we talk about craving and these obtainers. Not craving, thirsting, and these obtainers. And as an example of the obtainers, this thing of throwing out me and mine. We're dealing with happiness, unhappiness, neutral feeling. Don't want to be parted. So it's me. I don't want to be parted from that. That's separate. So we're thinking in terms of me, and then my body or my mind. I don't want that to be parted from it. They are mine. It's my body. I'm somehow inside here, talking in my head, worrying. And I don't want to be parted from, happiness. I don't want to be parted from a body. You have to put these together to see how it forms a whole state of mind that is just going to perpetuate our problematic existence. So try to reflect on that a little bit, and then we can have some questions, perhaps. Okay. Just again, a little summary. We have a misconception about me, our unawareness of how we exist. So it's as if we imagine, it is that we imagine that it is as if we were some independently existing entity, to put it just very simply. And so we're experiencing happiness or unhappiness or some neutral feeling, and me, that solid me, I want, not to be parted from that ordinary happiness and to be parted from, unhappiness and so on. I don't want to have to do anything about it. I just want it, to get my way. And I think that, if I get this object, this, a hug or something, that is going to make that me, feel better and more secure. And if I think in terms of, well, there's no consequences of my behavior, so naivety, that is somehow going to work for me. And underlying it is always thinking of everything in terms of me, identifying with what's going on, identifying with my body, or identifying with my depression, or identifying with my sickness, or not identifying, complete, that's not me. You look and you see in the mirror, this old, gray hair, white hair, and, wrinkled and sick. That's not me. Or, the more common example is you weigh yourself on the scale and you see, oh my God, that's not me. I can't weigh that much. So there's a separate me from all of this. And that's the problem. And this is what's going to be behind all our compulsiveness that leads to further rebirth. This is what we're talking about. Okay? And it all hinges on this misconception of me that wants to be not parted from happiness, that wants to be parted from unhappiness, and doesn't really know how that's going to happen. But just me, I want that. That could be liberated somehow from it by some, means that isn't going to work. Denial or whatever, naivety or misconception. If I just lose enough weight, then everything will be okay. If I have a facelift, that'll be okay. Body beautiful, that'll liberate me. Forever young. Yeah.
As what should I consider the talking in the head?
What should we consider the talking in the head? This is a mental cognition which has as its object a mental representation of the sound of words.
So is it a thought?
That's all that it is.
Nothing more. But it is a thought that I produce.
That I produce. That there's somebody sitting in your head with a microphone talking. Commenting, the radio commentator. Wow, that's really stupid. Oh, that's really nice. Complaining, the complainer in your head. There's no little me sitting there talking and taking in information on the video screens from the eyes and the information from the loudspeakers coming in from your ears, and then having all the buttons to press to move the body to do this or to get the mouth to say that. Come on, that's a cartoon fantasy. But it feels like that. That's what's so deceptive. It feels like there's somebody in there talking. All it is an arising of a mental hologram of a mental representation of the sound of words. That's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't quite agree, because like the words in his head aren't the same as the words in your head. I mean, somehow, you know, like for example, one talks about sharing love, but if I have a bill, you're not going to pay my bill, are you? I mean, I'm going to have to pay it myself. Do you know what I mean? Like some things are mine and some things are ours. And
Right. Conventionally, she's saying that when we have worries or thoughts in our heads, I'm thinking about my expenditures, my bills, you're thinking about your bills, my bills are not your bills, etc. Well, of course, we are individuals. Nobody is denying that. The content of the thought, he was just asking in general, what are these words that we think? Well, the individual words that we think are different. I mean, this gets into conceptual cognition. Conceptual cognition is very interesting, just as an aside, is thinking with categories. That's what conceptual thought is. So you have an audio category, and there are meaning categories. So an audio category is the audio category of the sound of a word. For instance, me, or voidness, or bill, or something like that. Now, that's a category. Every time that we hear, you know, you say the word me in a male voice, you say it in a female voice, you say it with this pronunciation, that pronunciation, this level of volume, that level of volume. How is it that we understand that everybody's saying the same word? It's because we fit it into a category of the word me. Same thing when I think me and you think me. We're thinking in terms of a category. So we have these fixed categories. That's conceptual thought. And then a meaning category, which is what that word means. And what it would mean to me might be different from what it means to you, but still there's some meaning category. Either that or it's meaningless. You know? Thinking the word voidness, I have no idea what it means. So it's meaningless. Or a word that I see in, you know, a language that I don't understand. So there's no meaning associated with it. But it's interesting how different people will have different meanings for the same word. Love, what it means to me, will be very different from what it means to you. Friendship, loyalty, good, bad, have lots of different meanings. But it has, you know, we fit it into a category. So when you have verbal thought and he has verbal thought, if you're thinking with the same language, then maybe the categories will be the same, although category, you know, your category is not my category. It's not as though there's a big category storage bin up in the sky and we plug into it like that. But nevertheless, you know, we all have these categories, but, you know, the individual, my thinking of me is like, you know, you saying me or the other person saying me. They're individual instances within this category. Do you follow?
yeah.
Yeah.
But so can one say that Buddhism is suggesting that there's like one kind of like universal orgasm or universal being, and everybody's kind of like sharing the same reality, but we've just compartmentalized?
No, no, not at all. Does Buddhism say that there's some universal being or
Like
some,
universal being.
or universal, we're all one?
Yeah, but it is in a way.
It isn't like that at all.
Yeah, it is, because it's saying it breaks down all these boundaries where there's no polarization and everything's in this kind of like melting pot.
Well, this is a very interesting point.
In a way, that's what it's saying, isn't it?
No, it's not.
But
When
not
it's
like-
saying that there are no melting, you know, there are no concrete walls between things.
Yeah, yeah, but that's what
You know,
I'm saying, yeah.
when there is no concrete walls, just think psychologically as an example. You know, we tend to think that, you know, the shields are up, you know, like around a spaceship. Or, you know, the walls are up between you and me. And if we can just take down the walls, then we could have good communication. Well, when the walls are down, That doesn't mean that I'm you and we merge into one undifferentiated blob of protoplasm. I'm still me and you're still you, but there are no walls that are encapsulating us and preventing us from communicating. There never were. We just imagined that they were and projected them, but there never were. So the same thing, everything is interconnected, but nothing exists like in a coloring book, child's coloring book with big lines, black lines around it. Things don't exist like that. Me with a big line around it and you with a big line around it. Or, you know, covered in plastic, coated in plastic and, you know, sitting by itself. When we realize that that is just fantasy, that doesn't correspond to reality at all, everybody still retains their individuality. It's not that we all merge, you know, like forming a chemical bond or something like that and making a new element. So individuality is always there.
Yeah, but it sounds a little bit like a contradiction, because when saying that there's no self, but the individuality is existing conventionally, but the walls are not there. So somehow it's a little bit like, what's all that? I mean. Well,
that is why we have to work very hard to get rid of the mental blocks that prevent us from really understanding that. That's why you have to build up, you know, it's called merit, which is a terrible way of translating it, as though, you know, if I get enough points, you know, enough stamps in my little book from the supermarket, then I win a toaster oven or something like that. It's not like that, you know, I win and now I understand. But rather, we are building up, it's like building up a charge on a battery so that eventually it will work. So we're building up more and more positive energy that will allow us to, oh, now I understand. These aren't contradictory. That things retain their individuality without being encapsulated in plastic and isolated from everything else.
So if two people became Buddhas, then there's two Buddhas and not.
If two people became Buddhas, they would be two people still. Buddhas retain their individuality.
Yeah.
Shakyamuni Buddha is not Maitreya Buddha.
Yeah. But I mean, these two, let's just, for argument's sake, you said there's two Buddhas that are left on the earth.
That sounds like a joke. There are two Buddhas made, you know, and on the, which one go?
I mean, I think,
right.
I think it'll become babies and go to school and grow up, or they're just going to be like in space, you know, with their own space, two individual spaces, you know.
Well, are there individual spaces? I don't know what you mean. I mean,
no,
we occupy space.
Because you said that the Buddhas were just being born again. Yesterday you said that the Buddhas were being born again, you know, as babies and then going to school.
Well, they could manifest.
Yeah.
They could manifest in many, many forms simultaneously. You know, like the moon reflecting in many puddles of water, you know, this sort of image that's used. So there can be many Buddhas. You know, from the Mahayana point of view, there are lots and lots of Buddhas. And they are all omniscient. So they are all aware of everything. It's like having many infinite universal mirrors. Each of them reflects everything, but it doesn't mean that they are the same mirror. One needs to build up a lot of positive energy, or whatever you want to call it, to be able to break through emotional and mental blocks that we have, in which we sort of just shut down and say, I can't understand that. And then you stop trying to understand it. You know, it's a mental block.
Yeah, so you get into more subtle mind body.
Well, you need to develop more background to be able to understand more fully. And you need to be more open and relaxed. Basically. How is it that you're able to understand something? Well, if you're very uptight about it, that, oh, you know, I have to understand this and I have to do it and so on, mind becomes very, very restricted and very tight. And then you're never going to be able to understand it. You're very relaxed and open, then a little bit easier for your intelligence to work properly without worrying that, you know, maybe I won't understand it, maybe I'm stupid. You know, everybody else understands it, I'm so stupid, I don't understand it. You know, so you have all this stuff which actually reinforces a mental block. You have to stop that. And doing positive things, being helpful to others, builds up your self-confidence. And when you build up your self-confidence and sense of self-worth, then you're more open and more relaxed, and you can understand better. So it's not some magical process that can, you know, collect enough points and you win a prize. It's not like that. Yeah.
So if we're not these separate entities, I'm sorry, if we are these separate entities without boundaries, then what is...
No, individual, not separate. We're individuals.
Okay.
Interacting with each other.
Okay, and arising from multiple factors.
Arising from multiple causes and conditions.
Then what's the definition of this dualism that we supposedly at some point may be able to stop seeing?
Well, dualism has many different definitions, depending on the system in which it is used. Dualistic perception or cognition would be to perceive things in a way that doesn't accord with reality. So it's dualistic. There's, you know, the way things actually exist, and then there's something which doesn't. So that's dual from that. That's two. Dualistic is the word two. So that's the meaning that's used in the Galut Prasangika usage of the term. There are other meanings of it, which are that, you know, there is, you think in terms of a solid me, independently existing me, and often, you know, either me and then the objects there, so as if totally unrelated in terms of a, you know, mental hologram and so on, more in the Chittamatra way of looking at it. It comes from the same natal source, the same seed of karma. We don't really want to go into that. That's very complicated. But more in terms of a dualistic of two me's. You know, I've got to control myself so that I don't act stupid. So you have the one me, which is the policeman, and the one me that is the potential criminal. That, you know, that's very dualistic. So that's based on a complete misconception of there being, you know, the solid me and then the, you know, the bad me. I've got to get myself up and out of bed this morning. So what, there's two me's. There's the lazy me lying in bed, and then there's the other me that's the good one saying, get up, you have to go to work. That's dualistic. To just get up. It's not that there's a me that is the disciplinarian and the lazy, no good me that wants to lay in bed. That's a fantasy. That doesn't, you know, refer to reality. There aren't two me's lying there.
It sounds like my two me's.
Right.
I think I recognize these two.
You recognize that. Yeah. Yeah.
But, so, the way we exist, you talk about individually, but not separately.
Uh-huh.
But we still affect each other, like in a way...
We still respect each other?
No, affect each other. Like
affect each other,
I
yes.
practice for all beings, or like like Tidy says, Tidnahan, when you practice, like, you even have your mother and father in me genetically in some way or others. Like, so changing some aspect in me could be changing some aspect in the surroundings.
Well, changing some aspects in me, I mean, he's asking what does it mean that we are interconnected? If I am encapsulated in plastic and you're encapsulated in plastic, then we can't affect each other at all. So we don't exist independently like that. Now, I can do things for you which will affect you. I can prepare a meal, but you have to eat it. If I eat it, it doesn't fill your stomach. So it isn't that, you know, when you talk about what I do affects you, you have to make a difference between, you know, feeding the baby fills the baby's stomach, doesn't fill my stomach. Feeding myself doesn't feed the baby's stomach, does it?
No. Maybe for some moms they would feel like, oh man. No.
Well, you can feel happy that you fed the baby, but that doesn't fill your stomach.
Yeah.
So we can interact with others, but you know, what I do, you know, you dedicate your positive force for, you know, to benefit all beings. Well, you could look at that in some sort of magical, mystical way, or you can look at it in some sort of more practical way. Like, for instance, I have, let me just look at my own personal case. I have had the great privilege to be able to study with the greatest of the Tibetan masters of the last generation. You know, His Holiness's teacher, His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachers. And so I have gained a great deal of that, from that, a great deal, and I've served them, you know, as translators and secretaries and so on. So that's built up a tremendous amount of positive force, dedicated to others in the sense that, like with my website, I am sharing the fruits of that, of what I learned with everybody else. Or I have taught in 70 countries around the world or more. And I've made so many connections and so on. So then I can share that with others. That if you need help in something, well, I know somebody or I have a friend in this country or that country that can help to make that happen. Or the fact that I'm able to make my website with 20 languages, and I know people in all these languages areas, and I have all the connections. So it's possible for me to do because I have those connections that have built up from what I have done in my lifetime of traveling with the Dalai Lama's teachers and translating and teaching all over the world and, you know, going to Harvard and all of that sort of stuff. So I am sharing it. That's dedicating. You know, may everybody be able to benefit from that, which I would not be able to do if I didn't build up, if I had not built up that network of all these contacts and so on, the positive force from that, and all that study and all that knowledge. So that's a very clear, concrete example. You know, it's not sort of magic, you know, ooh, you know, good vibes, I'll send it out to everybody, and everybody, you know, will be happy.
That's what a lot of New Age people think.
That's New Age, that's not Buddhism.
But, yeah. Yes.
So what's with the Buddha folder?
Pardon?
The Buddha folder you were talking about yesterday.
The Buddha folder.
Yeah, let's put it in the...
Well, yes, so then we think, so why am I building up, you know, all these contacts? Why am I gaining all this knowledge? I'm gaining all this knowledge to be able to share it with others. I'm not gaining all this and to benefit them and to help it, not just share so that they'll think I'm clever and how smart I am, but share it with them so that they can benefit to overcome their suffering.
Why does it matter?
So rather than saving it just so that I can get a good job, You know, well, you know, if I have all of this, then looks good on my CV. I'll get a good university teaching position. Make a lot of money. So it is the drive. You know, what is your aim for doing something? To be able to help others, or to be able to get a good job and pay the mortgage in your house. And then what's the emotion that's driving you toward that? You know, attachment or compassion for others. So all of that's involved with, you know, why you do something and the dedication. Okay? So why don't we end our session, and then we will. You have one more question?
I think there.
No, that's
No.
not relevant.
Okay. So let us end our session, and then we'll continue.